Well, hello, Michelle. So happy to have you here on Rendering Unconscious to talk about your new book, Modern Magic.
Thank you for having me.
So, how did this book come about? I see you also had a book, Modern Tarot, which of course now I'm going to have to get as well. But how did the making of this book come about?
Well, I had a really great time writing Modern Tarot, and I've really enjoyed it being out in the world and the connections that I've made with readers. So for a while, I've been thinking, like, what would a follow-up book look like? And I had different ideas, and I do want to do a book where I get even deeper into tarot, into sort of the symbolism, the archetypes, and get sort of more mystical and almost less practical with it. But I feel like a lot of the folks who have contacted me and reached out around modern tarot are people who are sort of at the beginning of their witch practice,
Hmm.
and or people who've had one for a while but liked kind of a fresh infusion. So I thought, why not see if I could do something like that around, magic in a larger way and just talk about what my approach to it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and taking people on your journey. It's such a nice mix because you talk about like kind of more childhood or adolescent experiences and then modern day experiences, and you weave all these like spells into it as well. So people have
Yeah.
examples of practical magic.
Yeah, it was really fun to for me to look back on just to see the whole trajectory of my relationship with magic and to see it starting kind of at a really early age. I mean, I didn't even put real early childhood stuff in there, but more when I began to see it for what it is, and recognize that it's like a witchcraft. And that happened when I was a teenager, or like a, preteen. And all of my sort of childhood obsessions with different phenomena and stories and myths really cohered, and I was like, oh yeah, it's this magical practice is like a container that can hold all of these things that I've been so curious about and interested in for so long. So it was really fun to look back on, like, being a goth teenager, or when my grandmother took me to get her tea leaves read in Boston, but we had to be quiet about it because it was, the church didn't like it. And I talk a lot about being raised Catholic too, and how that was strangely both, an attempted barrier, right, between me and my natural magic, but also weirdly, it also helps it along in a way because there's so much, ripped off paganism in Catholic imagery and practice.
Absolutely, and the different the whole ritual and like pageantry to it.
The
I feel like a
pageantry.
lot of people are raised, yeah, like in a Catholic background, and then it kind of morphs. And of course, there's so many religions that are like syncretic that
Yes.
like in Saint, I'm from Miami, as we were talking before we recorded. So of course, Santeria and like the saints and the Orishas get kind of merged so that people can practice in secret.
Yes, and I wrote a little bit about that because the city that I grew up in had a ton of like Caribbean immigrants who lived there, and so we had a little Santeria store in Chelsea. And when I discovered it as a teenager, I was like, "Wait, what's this?" I knew it was a magic store. I knew, and I was already interested in magic at that point, like really overtly. And I didn't understand all these candles that had like my Catholic saints on them, and it
Mhm.
really actually helped me open up my ideas of worship and deities, and almost kind of helped my own practice become a little more syncretic as a result.
Absolutely. And you also asked what I miss about being in the States compared to Sweden. And that's one of the things I miss is those candles. You cannot find those candles anywhere. And if you do find it in like a little witch store, they're like $20.
Oh no,
Like
I know,
this
and they're
would
so
literally be like a dollar
inexpensive.
fifty.
Really? Oh my God, if I walk down the street, right now I'm in Southern California, and there's, just a grocery store, like a big grocery store, and they have them there. It's, yeah, for $1.50. It's so awesome.
Exactly. And Florida water. The same thing. The
Yes.
last like little magic store I found here, I was like, oh, there's Florida water. And I was like, wait, let me check the price. And it was like $30. It's like,
What? It's like
no.
$4. Oh, that's so sad.
So I asked my friend to visit. They said, is there anything you want? I'm like, please bring me Florida water. And they brought me
Florida
two
water and
pink
candles.
bottles. Yeah, exactly. And jar candles, please. There's no
That's
seven
so
day candles
great.
here. That's not a thing.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Have you been able to find any elements of like like indigenous witchcraft where you are, or pagan practices?
Yeah, the Scandinavian Aesir, they're called. They're like pagan pantheon with Odin and Freya and everybody. They're very strong, so they're like
Yeah.
super present. And since my husband is Swedish, and he's like a big occultist, so he's like, yeah, he's taught me a lot about it. But it's also just like Gnostic, like it's just like personal experience that you just like. They're so present that they just like pop up everywhere. And I'm learning the runes kind of more intuitively, whereas I tried to like study them before but never really got them. But now it's like they're just like popping up in my dreams and things. So the land definitely affects your magic.
It does. That's so cool. Wow. You get Loki.
Yes, we have Loki, and it's really interesting too to see like things like that, like the 7 day candles. I just took that for granted because they've always been
Yeah.
around my whole life. I lived in Miami and New York, just like plenty of
Mhm.
these things. And then when you don't have the things that you're used to, then having to adjust. Like instead, I've been going, there's like a nice Arabic store in our town, and so I've been going there and getting like rose water and things like that, and they have like nice natural herbs and things as well. So it's like having to like substitute things and kind of use your intuition to like, yeah, make it work with different things that you're not necessarily used to.
Oh, that's so
Been an
cool.
interesting challenge.
Yeah, it sounds like kind of a fun challenge if you can get over missing the things that you
The
love.
shock. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm like,
Yeah,
wait, why don't you have this here? It's like, oh right, I moved to a country where people are kind of homogenous and they don't have these infusions. There's no
right, right.
Mexican food, for example.
Well, that's hard. That is really hard.
Yeah, shock.
Whoa.
Yeah, but it's so interesting the way that you talk about it's I think it's really important to look at magic in this way and like talk about personal experiences and how you weave your magic together as an individual because as you mentioned in the book like so many people working are kind of individual practitioners. They don't have a group or a big system and they're looking at books and different things they find in these shops and using their intuition to kind of weave together their own magical practice. And I think that's so important to like empower people because so many people are worried about like, what if I do this wrong? And what am I
Right.
gonna do? And like, I don't know, have this like book knowledge. Like you have to be an academic or something to be a witch, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, no, totally, totally. It's so silly. Or, there still is so much superstition
Mm.
around these practices also where people can be like, "Oh, if I do something wrong, I'm gonna like curse myself." And it's like, no, there's really no way to do anything wrong. Like it's just your intention and then bringing in, the items that you really like fuel and support your intentions and put you into that psychic space, where things broaden and you can sort of attach to different energies and manifest. So yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
I always like that's like one of my big pet peeves is when people are so worried about doing something wrong and they're gonna like curse themselves or like ruin their own lives because they like didn't
yeah.
do something with the right steps. I'm like, who is telling people these things? You know,
I
I've
just
never
think
had
it's
that experience. If your intention is there, you know, that's what matters, like you said.
absolutely. I think it's like leftover, just like how we've all been, sort of damaged by patriarchal culture and patriarchal religions where there's like a right and a wrong and there's punishment and it's very black and white thinking. And, even if we don't want to live like that and that's not who we are, we're still, probably marinating in a larger culture that pushes that on you. And so you got to, you have to just root that out, I think, in yourself and say no to it and just trust that you can do things in a messy way, in an imperfect way, with an experimental, energy about it. And nothing bad's going to happen. Only good things are going to happen, honestly.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like I'm also a psychoanalyst and I feel like
Yeah.
that's like the whole like my whole practice is basically helping people locate these like systems that they've internalized and then people start identifying with it like thinking that's them and then you kind of have to realize that you're doing that and like break away from that so that you can really kind of let yourself flow because these things are so restrictive like so many yeah like racist misogynist homophobic transphobic ableist beliefs that have just been imposed on us since like before we were born for generations.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God, that you're doing such good work. That's awesome. That's really
I love
cool.
it.
Yeah, I
It really
bet.
helped me, so that's why I'm glad that I'm able to help other people with it.
Yeah, that's so great. Wow.
Absolutely. And something you
Yeah.
also talk about that's so important, that I don't know people know this story, but it's about the monk with the Maleficum. Do you want to talk about that? Because that's such an important story. And I've had lots of witches on the podcast, but we have not talked about that. So I think it's important to talk about so people know the history.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's pretty dark, and but I did want to I was just thinking about where did all of this animosity, fear, and hatred of witches come from, and witches, and also, women who were strong and powerful, and men who were maybe more effeminate and maybe more queer presenting in their time, right?
Mhm.
Or who were close with these women, but not in a romantic way. I don't know. There's an element of the men that also were sort of punished alongside women. But I looked into it, and it was a fascinating story. And it really is amazing how it came down to this one man. I mean, he was part of, he was a Dominican monk. He was very ensconced in the church during the time of the Inquisition. So he wasn't totally alone. He had this enormous, violent, um, you know, system that was backing him up. But he really was the one who spearheaded how can we punish witches? And I started the story sort of before this moment when witchcraft was just, I think, seen as more of like a folk practice, and people didn't really care about it. I think the people who were practicing were also herbalists. They probably were helping people. It wasn't this big scary thing. And there was certainly no like devils or demons or any of these things. It was really just pagan folk magic, I think, as we know it. And it was also the moment when the church was punishing heretics. The Catholic Church was punishing heretics really severely. And at that point, being a heretic was deliberate. Like it wasn't just like, oh, a witch is a heretic. It's like a heretic is very specifically a person working against the church who says, like, Jesus is not the son of God. The church has too much power. The Pope shouldn't have all these riches. Those were heretics.
Which is true.
And yeah, all of it's true. Everything any heretic has ever said is golden. Absolutely. And so eventually, there was started becoming more suspicious about witches, and is witchcraft heresy? And before the church got involved, like it seemed sort of to me that if you were mad at a witch, or you felt like a witch had done you wrong, it was a sort of like a civil matter. It was like you went to the people's court or something. You're like, I don't think this woman cursed my hogs and they're not giving birth anymore, things like that. And then this one guy really got it in he got it in his head. He got obsessed with this one woman. Basically, he was a very powerful rich woman who a night that she was involved with, this was sort of in like Italy, like the kind of the I have my book right here. I'm going to look at it specifically.
It's in Austria.
It was in
Like
Austria.
northern Austria, so it's South Tyrol in Italy, like up near
Okay.
Austria. She was an
Yes,
Austrian
yes.
woman. That's what it was.
Yes, it's Innsbruck was the name of the place, but I'm like, what was it? What would we know it to be now? So yeah, Helena Scherberich. I did the audio recording for this book, and this chapter was just so hard because I couldn't. I knew all these words, and I wasn't pronouncing any of them properly, and I still might not. So this guy got it in his head that he was going to prosecute this woman because the knight she'd been involved with died, and there was a rumor it was witchcraft. So he came to Innsbruck, and his name was Heinrich, and he tried to prosecute her, but like the city was like, get out of here, we like this lady, like what are you doing? And so he kind of went back to Germany with his tail between his legs, and wrote the papal bull that ended up got a papal bull from the Pope, saying that no, you have to listen to me, and so when he went back, they had to listen to him. They did this whole trial. They did end up trying this woman for witchcraft, but she prevailed, and she was amazing. She was like, there's all this stuff on record of her heckling him in the streets and saying like, fie on you, you bad monk, what's her great, she curses
Yeah,
him
that was really
basically.
good.
Oh my God, I want to get like a tattoo of that or something. It's like, so Helena Schaberin, may the falling evil take you. That's what she said. I mean, oh my God, what is better than that? So, he did all this stuff. Surely she was tortured, and there were some other women, I believe, involved that also got, tried as well as her. But he still lost at the end of it all. And she came out on top. And then he was really upset. And this guy just like hated women. He couldn't handle that she had power, she had support. He went back to Germany again and he wrote the Malleus Maleficarum. Am I saying it right? It's called the Hammer of the Witches. And it's
It's
basically this,
Latin.
yeah, it's Latin, and it's this insane zine, basically, by this 15th century incel, and who just was like, here's how you identify witches, here's what they do, and here's how you try them, here's how you prove it, here's how you punish them. And it's really grim and bizarre, and but it's like so it's so absurd that it's a really, I mean, I don't want to say it's a fun read because it's really dark and it was the tract that was responsible for so many thousands and thousands of people being murdered. But his imagination is really something. Like he is talking about like one thing that witches can do is like remove men's penises and then resituate them up in trees in a nest and then feed them oats like they're little baby birds. Like he's seen this apparently. So there's all this crazy stuff in there. Um, as well as the introduction to these women being in a pact with the devil, which had never been a thing before, and now it's like he had this whole sort of formal procedure of becoming a consort of the devil, and like basically having to like kiss his anus and like all this wild stuff, and you're
Who
like, this
comes
guy,
up with that?
yeah, you're like, he just was like a wild, like pervert, but like so bad, like not a good pervert, like a really bad pervert.
Yeah, a
And
really repressed monk who
really
had like wild
depressed.
fantasies that he
Yeah.
was not enacting, so he took it out on all these women instead.
Oh, it's so awful, but it was, yeah, I mean, it was really fun to make fun of him in the writing, to just be like, oh, because we're always living in a repressive time on some level, right? And it's like there's always those forces of repression, even if we're having a moment where we are experiencing maybe more net liberation as a species of humans. There's always like these people who are trying to work against it. And so it was really interesting to see him and just recognize him and his energy and so many of like the forces that are at work in our culture today, especially I'm here, in the United States, and the right-wing people are just losing their minds over nothing, basically saying that people are, feeding disembodied penises oats in a tree, So it was really interesting to look at it with that a little bit of that perspective. And it was really fun to make fun of Heinrich.
Absolutely. I love that you call him an incel. It's so true and so good.
Yeah, yeah,
And
totally.
it's true, the same thing's happening. Like if you're around in the 80s, the satanic panic, that was a real thing. People went to
Yeah,
jail, like
yeah,
and it's still like a new version of it is happening now with this
yeah, absolutely.
crazy fundamentalism and this Project 2025 and like
Yeah.
it's all yeah. And we were talking about yesterday, and a friend of ours was here visiting from Stockholm, and he was like, it's so strange that in America they're like worried about like books hurting kids, but they don't want to like ban the guns or like regulate the guns that are like killing
Right.
them in their schools. It's like, yeah, how does this make any sense?
It's like a weird, like death cult or something. Like it's really hard to not get super dark about it because you're like, these are things that we know don't hurt kids. Like we just know that they don't hurt kids. They just maybe they enlighten them to how screwed up you are, and you're so like ashamed and self-loathing on some deep level. You just want to be, not have like the sun come up on like what a monster you are. And books I think do and they obviously they broaden people's understanding of the world. They show kids that there's other ways to be, and so threatening to these people. It's
It's
really
so
sad.
important. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's terrible. Absolutely. But yeah, I just love that section so much. And so I had to bring it up. I was on my birthday.
Yeah.
There's, of course, we have castles here in Sweden. And so we went to this castle that was just like a couple hours away for my birthday this summer. And they were having this great exhibition called Hexon, which is like the witches. And they had like all this fantastic art, and they had a whole story about the witch trials that happened here, which I didn't know anything about, but it was, the
Wow.
same time. It spread everywhere. It's
Yeah, it's been
amazing.
really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, and it
Yeah.
was again this like one priest that just like, yeah, had this up his ass and was just like going after people. And that and like thousands of people ended up being killed. And it was so interesting to read all about it. But of course, also the Swedes are very, like as a whole, are very secular, which is really
Hmm.
nice.
I bet that must be nice to be in a country like that. Oh my God.
It's
Wow.
refreshing. Yeah, I didn't know that
Yeah.
existed actually. Um, but it's
Uh,
very nice. It's actually the last country in Europe to become Christian officially. It wasn't Christian until 1124. So
oh, wow.
they had like 400 years or something where they really like fought it, and they would like get a Christian king and then they would kill him and then have the pagan king back, and it like went back and forth for a long time before it was like officially Christian from then on. So that's also very nice. I'm proud
That's
of them for
awesome.
that. Yeah.
When
Go
was your birthday?
Swedes.
What sign are you?
Cancer, July 1st. Cancer,
Oh,
Leo rising, Capricorn moon.
oh, that's a good situation. I have a Leo rising too.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's
When's your
fun.
birthday?
February 18th. I'm an Aquarius, although that is the day it switches to Pisces, but my hour of birth was solidly in Aquarius territory.
Very cool.
Hmm.
I love it.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
I also love being a Leo rising where everyone thinks that's my personality, but really I'm like a hiding little crab that's like,
Yeah, but that must really help kind of usher you out into the world a little bit, you know?
yeah, same.
Yeah, yeah, it's good.
It's
It's
good
good. Then you
for
can
sure.
retreat. I
Yeah. And so, what are some more happy spells then, since we went into the dark recesses of
know
the
some happy spells.
Inquisition?
I know, right? Oh my gosh. Let me see. Which ones did I make here? It's the saint ones. Um, have been really into doing getting in touch with chosen ancestors. I
Yes,
know
me
that
too.
oh really?
Yes.
Who's you may I ask who's your who you've located or who you are bonded with?
Yeah, I feel like I love blood ancestors because they're one side, but there's adopted ancestors like you're talking about. Like
Yeah.
being an artist, like a lot of artists have artists that really influence them. And I
Yes.
really got into it from Genesis and Lady J. Breyer Peorage. Um
Yes.
yeah, and so like I knew Genesis, and then I acquired this necklace that belonged to Lady J, because I was at Jen's house and had a dream about it, and then
Oh,
no, I saw it Jen was wearing it at the time, and I saw it there, and then I was like, "What's that?" And Jen was like, "Oh, it's the Pandragini pendant." And I was like, "Ooh, that's really interesting." And then I went home and had a dream about it. So I like woke up from this dream where the necklace was like flying in my face like this, and I woke up,
wow.
and of course I love magical people because you can do this. Like texted Jen at like 2 in the morning, whatever. And I was like, I had a dream about that necklace. And Jen was like, we think Jay wants you to have it, you know? And I was like, okay. So I ended up acquiring this necklace. And that's really like opened up a whole world because of course, I already believed that you could communicate with people on the other side. But then when you know someone who like knew someone who's now on the other side, and you see like start seeing how it works like on another level, and then it
Yeah.
started helping me kind of communicate with other people on the other side, like Burroughs and Geisen and different artists, just by like using their words and like cutting up their work and
Oh,
manifesting that way. So I love doing like necromancy through art, and especially like cutting up
yeah.
people's writing and listening to their music. And sometimes I create oils for the artists that I like to work with, things like that.
Oh God, I love that. That's so cool.
What about you?
Um, I'm really attached to Cookie Mueller, the writer Cookie Mueller. She was a writer. She died of HIV in the 80s. She was an actress. She was in John Waters' early films. And I really her writing has been an influence on me for a very long time because she just like had this wild life and wrote about it, and it gave me a lot of permission to kind of see my own life as worthy of being material, that because beyond these books I also have written a lot of memoir. I have like a lot of other writing that I do, so I really connect to her. She was also like a queer mom, and I am too. So yeah, I just more and more have been once I took that leap to trust that the things that the messages that I was receiving were in fact messages. And I know it's really hard. And I teach a writing for witches workshop, and we work with writing and we work with, spells and meditation and stuff. And I know that it can be really hard to make that leap for people to believe that like, oh, it's not just my imagination or my mind, or if it is that, that's what it is. You know what I mean? That
Yeah, so
counts.
great.
It
What's
is
wrong with that?
actually right. That's the spirit coming through. Those are the channels that it uses. But once I started, it became so cool. And I had this one meditation, and I talk about the meditations that I like, the process I use, and I work with tarot also to kind of get a little deeper and get some more messages from people. But it was so cool. I was doing a meditation to connect with Cookie Mueller, and I really got this. She's a little like spiky sometimes, but in like a sassy way. Like my first contact with her, she just was like, "Who are you?" Like I think there's a lot of people contacting Cookie Mueller, and like we never knew each other. But she was, what she wanted from me was the lust card in the tarot, which was really cool. And I just felt like she was someone who lived with a lot of lust and a lot of passion and like likes to see that in other people and kind of get a little bit, siphon a little bit of that off for herself. But I got this message that was like, why am I not on your altar? I need to be on your altar if you like me in business. And I was like, absolutely. And I got this really strong sense. I'm a big thrifter and I live down the street from a Goodwill. And I thought there's something at the Goodwill it's Cookie, it's her, it's for the altar. I'm gonna know it when I see it. I'm just gonna go there. And I went there and I ransacked that Goodwill and I found nothing. And I was like, oh, I guess not. And then I noticed there was this weird little table that was piled with like electronics. It's like all the kind of stuff at a thrift store I never look at, lots of cords and stuff. But I went over and messed and I pushed it aside. Let me show you what it is. It's so crazy.
Ooh, I
This
love
is
your
what's
top.
sitting underneath all of
Mm.
these. It's
Wow.
this insane tchotchke. It's so Cookie Mueller. It's so kitschy. It's this weird little white dog with bulging golden eyes and a tuft of marabou hair on a book, on a gilded book. I was like, oh my God. Oh my God. I felt so happy that she really made me look for it, but there it is. And so I keep that. And then
It's
a little bit
wonderful.
later, I wasn't getting until I did that, I couldn't connect with her. I would try and she was just like, talk to me when I'm on your altar. And then I got this really strong message that she wanted a hot dog, which was really amazing. I'm like, yes, it's these weird earthly pleasures. And so I got the opportunity this summer to teach in Provincetown. And that's a place that she used to live and spent a lot of time. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to Provincetown, I'm gonna get a hot dog,
That's so
sit on the beach,
cool.
eat it for Cookie. I don't even eat hot dogs, but I did. And the people in my workshop were like, maybe you can get a veggie dog. And I was like, no, man, she wants a hot dog. Like I can do that for her, like I'm not gonna be like, sorry, here's a skimpy little veggie dog. I'll do that for myself, but not for Cookie. So yeah, so there's things like that, like how you can find and think about who your chosen ancestors are.
Absolutely. I think for artists makes it easy to understand. It's like in Patti Smith's book, I remember she was writing about like Jean Genet and how much she like yeah, like
Yes.
went to his grave and like brought her from like one place where he was in prison to the place, another place and everything. And people just get
Yeah.
inspired to do these things. And that's what like the people on the other side need is this kind of materiality. So they love like, yeah, like their favorite food, a hot dog or something that they miss, or cigarettes. Cigarettes and spirits is
Yeah.
a common one. And yeah,
Uh-huh.
I have a friend who like pours them little cups of coffee in the morning, things like
Yes.
that. You just
Yes.
treat them like a good friend.
Exactly. I travel a lot with my writing in the United States and I do book tours and whatnot. And I've traveled a lot with this one artist, Christy Rode, who she's actually done a really great tarot deck called the Next World Tarot. She's from Miami. She grew up in
Oh,
Miami.
oh,
She's
cool.
amazing. Yeah. And so when I just traveled with her a bunch because she's in a book I did over here. And every we would land wherever we're staying and it's like the altar to Allegua came out and like she'd make a little coffee in the kitchen for him and give him some candy and just like every day. It's so inspiring to be around somebody whose practice is that strong and playful, and portable. So
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
Oh, you have to introduce us.
Yeah. Oh, I will. Oh my God, absolutely. Yeah, she's really cool. She's working on a graphic novel right now. She's a visual artist and a writer. And she's in a punk band. She's just like a very cool person.
Love it.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Super fun. This is
Yeah.
great. I love it. So we've
Yeah,
got
me too.
ancestors, we've got the history going, we've got practical spells. You have, like you
Yeah.
said, spells for saints in there, different saints you
Hmm.
work with. Um, and how did those come about? How did the specific saints come to you? Is that from
You
childhood
know,
Catholicism
it
or
is
did
from
they come
childhood
later?
It is, yeah, it's from childhood Catholicism and especially I really connected with Saint Bernadette when I was like in second grade. I went to Catholic school, and the nun who was our teacher, actually it was first grade, for the holidays, we all got like a 45 of the record, The Song of Saint Bernadette. And I just was really kind of enchanted by it. And I loved the idea that she was this girl, and the Virgin Mary appeared to her, that like, so it's so like supernatural, and that she was in this little like, what's a grotto? I was always like, she was in the grotto. Like, what the hell's a grotto? I didn't know, but it sounded magical. And I like that, like, people didn't believe her and she was persecuted a little bit for it. I don't know if I was like seeing an image of my own life as I got older, being a weirdo, but I just appreciated everything about that story, and it really stuck with me. By the time you get confirmed in the Catholic Church, you're really old enough to know better, but not necessarily old enough to really stand up to your parents and tell them to go to hell. So that was where I was at. Like, I didn't want to do it. I didn't believe in Catholicism. I was really into like punk and goth, but I didn't want to have the fight with my family, so I just did it. But my confirmation name is Bernadette. And when I was
Mm.
working on this book, I was thinking about her and looking more into her story, and I found that her feast day is my birthday, which
Oh,
is wild.
wow.
So I didn't know that. So that felt very cool. But being the way I am, I'm attracted to like St. Lucy with her eyes on a plate, and St.
Hmm.
Agnes with her boobs on a plate, the kind of more all the stories are kind of grisly.
Yeah, get a
And
book of saints. It's weird, like the Maleficum. It's like some weird
yes,
fantasies these people were having.
totally. Totally. Like, I went to Barcelona a couple years ago with my husband for our honeymoons. He's American, but his heritage is Spanish, and he wanted to check it out, and I'd never been there. So, and it's like the patron saint of like Barcelona is like Saint Eulalia, who was like rolled in a barrel down a hill that was like pierced through with daggers. Just crazy, crazy stories. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
they're
I also
often like
love
young
them.
virgin girls who are like
Yeah.
14 or something.
Yeah, totally, totally, totally. It's like the Marquis de Sade or something, but
Mhm.
like they literally made a religion
They're
out
all
of
little
it.
Justines, yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. But I don't know, I love them. And I really love the extra layers of meaning and magic that have been placed on these deities through Santeria and Lukumi, and all these syncretic Caribbean magics, which I can't I can't claim I'm a white person. I'm not. I know there are white people in those traditions. I'm not one of those people, but I've been around the imagery for so long, and I do really connect with it and respect it a lot. So
Yeah, and I feel like, yeah, I mean, people like we're in this incarnation now, but who knows where you were incarnated before, what your pattern was. I feel like
mhm,
all my magical friends like definitely have the view of like these deities want to spread. And they spread all over the place, and
it's true.
they
I mean, I
kind of
actually
they cross boundaries and lines and countries and
yeah.
oceans and
No, I actually believe that 1,000,000%. It's like it's so much bigger, but it's hard to, keep that balance of knowing that and also paying respect to the people here on Earth, and the various, especially just like with cultural appropriation and the way that that's harmed people of color
absolutely.
in America. So keeping an eye on that is real important to me. But I love and respect those deities. I work with the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot deck is one of the decks that I work with. I love New Orleans. It's like a really special place to me. And I love all of those images in the deck and the stories they tell.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely do not try to sell other people's things, other
Yeah,
people's
no, don't.
spirits and
Yeah.
make money off of it. That's not
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
Don't do
yeah.
that.
Don't do it, man.
But
Don't
in your
do it.
own
Yeah.
private practice, work openly.
Yeah. I think that's really good. Yeah. I think that's like a good takeaway. It's like whoever comes to you. Yeah. And it
Exactly.
feels
Be
also,
open.
yeah, yeah, for sure. I did,
Totally.
I did at one point when I was in my 20s, and I was learning, I was diving a little bit deeper into learning about Santeria and learning about the Orishas. And I really loved Elegua, who's like the child trickster deity. And I had this wild experience where I was doing some I love doing dream magic. I write about it in the book, but I asked Elegua to come to me in a dream and show me something so that I might learn more about him. And I had this dream that I was living in San Francisco at the time in the Mission, which is a Latino neighborhood. And in my dream, the streets had all been cleared out because it was Carnival, which, is the big Latin American celebration. Um, and all of a sudden there was a boxing ring in the middle of the street. And I was like, oh, what's going to happen? And I had all this, I love bubble gum. It's like this very specific gumball that I'm like always been obsessed with. Like I'll buy like 10 of them and carry them. I just love them. And in my gym, I had a whole bunch. I had a pack. And this guy came up to me. He was this short, very broad Mexican man. He came up to me and said, "Oh, can I have a piece of gum?" And I said, "Sure." And I handed it over to him and he said, "My gum." And he like held it to his heart. And I was like, "No, it's my gum, but you can have a piece, but give it back." And he was like, "Nope, my gum." And it was just like so teasing, like, and I was like, man, it's my gum. And then he just turned and walked away with it. And I was so pissed. And then I looked down and my arms were filled with roses. It was like this, and then I woke up and I was like, "Oh my God, Allegra stole my gum."
So like that.
It's so like it gave me roses, And so I love that. I love that so much.
Like was a key example before I was uh given Warriors intensity of myself. I had people like in Miami that were like, no, no, don't go near Legua, da 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 da. And I've only had again like lovely, fun, like maybe little trickstery experiences, but so many people said so many negative things about him. But to me, he's just been like a road opener, and he
Yeah.
meet you in the street, and that's why you should always be nice to everyone because you never know who is a traveler, who is a legua, who is a deity,
I
and
love that.
you just have to, yeah, maybe don't be an asshole. Maybe
Right.
if you're not an asshole, then you don't
Maybe
have
a
to
Lego
worry
will
so
come to
much.
you. Right. Right. Oh my God, I love that.
Is there anything else that we didn't get to that you wanted to mention? Do you have any events or workshops or anything coming up?
Well, oh my gosh, I don't have my date book, and I'm not quite sure when this will air. So, I guess I shouldn't mention any events per se, but follow me on Instagram. I'm Michelle Tease, Teaz, and I always post when I'm doing things. I do teach workshops a lot. I teach tarot workshops and I teach my writing for witches workshop, and they're on Zoom, so they're open, to everybody, no matter where you are. Mostly, we have had folks in Europe actually in them. And so I try to get the timing, the right balance where it's like maybe you're up a little early or going to bed a little late, but you can do it.
Mm,
Yeah, I put everything up there, what I'm doing.
perfect. We'll follow you on Instagram. It was so
Thank
lovely
you.
to meet you. I'm so
It's
glad
so
we
cool to
touch
meet
and
you
put us in
too.
touch.
Yeah, me too. This is awesome. And I just like, yeah, I really appreciate like all the reference points that you've been making this whole time. I'm like so into what you're into. It's really cool to meet.
Same. And yeah, if you have any friends, like the friend you mentioned, or anyone that you think would be interested in talking about this, because basically, I started the podcast because I wanted to talk about psychoanalysis and all the different ways that you can use psychoanalysis that's not just like in the clinic, because people, of course, use it for film and writing and just
Yeah.
observing the world,
Yeah.
things like that. But then I really noticed, like from going to different conferences and things, people are very anti-racist and see how like colonization is clearly a problem, has caused so much like inequity in the world, but they still had this like thing against like magic, like still like making fun of it, poo-pooing it. And I
Uh-huh.
just felt like, don't you all see that like I'm talking about like academia, it's
Sure.
like, don't
Yeah.
you all see that like this is also like looked down upon because it's primitive, and the primitive people that
Right.
we're allowed to colonize them because they're primitive and less than us. So you're basically like,
Right.
yeah, still having that lens, even though you see like in all these other ways that's not okay. So then I was like, I kind of then, yeah, like you also mentioned, had to come out of the broom closet
Mhm.
and be like, hey, that's not cool. Like, let's talk about that. And like, don't penalize or pathologize people and their belief systems. And why don't you just be open to it and like not insult magical thinking, I
Yeah.
remember I gave a talk at a conference where I actually like looked up like what is the actual definition of magical thinking, and it was like believing that you can like make change in the world or something. And it was like believing that your thoughts can make change in the world, and it's like, like, what's the wrong with that? Like,
Right.
we're all
Right. It's like
changing the world,
optimism.
at least our world, with our mind all the time. So
Mhm. Yeah, totally. Oh my God.
Yeah, so
Wow,
I
that's
love
so
having witchy
cool.
people or writers or artists, or I like to just showcase anybody with different worldviews so that people can see there's so many different ways to be in the world, you know?
Maybe I'll connect you with, I've started a small press and we
Oh,
have our,
cool.
yeah, it's really awesome. Our first book came out in May. It was an anthology, but tomorrow is actually the pub date of our first novel, and it's called New Mistakes, and it's really fun. It's like queer, and it's about like telepathic plants and UFOs and art and sex, and it's like I think you would like it.
Wonderful.
I
I
can
love
send
it
you a
already.
PDF of it if you want, and then
Yeah,
yeah, Clement is really fun to talk to, who wrote it. They're great. Yeah.
that sounds great.
Cool.
Send it my way.
I will. That's
And
awesome.
we said to have the podcast up after the publishing date of the book, which was October 1st. So it'll be
Yeah.
up right around then.
Awesome. Oh, okay, great. Well, like send me stuff to promote it and everything, and I will do that.
Okay.
Cool.
So nice
It's
to
so nice
meet
to meet
you.
you.
And
Same.
we'll
Have a
be in
great
touch.
awesome. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.